welcome in. Ever feel like achievement is this big mystery? Like some people just have IT? Today we're diving into the science of success with Adam Grant's hidden potential. Forget born brilliant, we're uncovering the often surprising stuff that really drives people to achieve great things.
It's a myth-busting deep dive for sure. We're talking character, motivation, even how the systems around us can help or hinder our potential. It's a journey we can all take, and this book is packed with insights on navigating it more effectively.
Love that. A journey, not some elite club you're either in or out of. Grant starts with this story about the Raging Rooks, a chess team from a tough Harlem school.
Uh-huh.
They end up competing against this fancy private school, Dalton. Now, you'd expect the Dalton kids, with all their advantages, to clean up, right?
It seems like a foregone conclusion, doesn't it? But that's where things get interesting. The Raging Rooks don't just win, they dominate. And their secret weapon wasn't some genius chess strategy.
Okay, now I'm hooked. Tell me more.
Their coach focused on building their character, and not in the way we usually think about it, like just being a good person.
Right.
He treated character traits, proactivity, discipline, determination as skills, things you practice and strengthen over time.
That's a game changer. It's not about being born with some internal moral compass. It's about honing those qualities like you would a muscle.
Precisely. And the research backs this up. These character skills are more accurate predictors of long-term success than things like early academic performance.
Wow. Okay, that challenges some serious assumptions right there. It makes you think about those folks who maybe struggled early on but achieved incredible things through sheer grit. It's like heart over head start. Makes you realize these are skills we can all cultivate no matter where we begin.
Incredibly empowering, isn't it? Potential isn't some fixed thing you either have or you don't. It's a journey, and we have the power to choose our path and equip ourselves for it.
So how do we DO that? How do we tap into that potential, especially when it feels hidden?
Well, Grant dives into some fascinating research on this, and he argues that one key is actually embracing discomfort.
Now that sounds a little counterintuitive. Usually discomfort is something we try to avoid, right?
It is, and yet it's often a signpost we're on the right track. Think about learning a new language, for instance.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. It's awkward, you make mistakes, it's tempting to just revert back to what's comfortable.
Exactly. But the book gives examples of polyglots, people who speak multiple languages, who made breakthroughs by leaning into that discomfort. They'd intentionally put themselves in situations where they had to speak the language poorly, knowing that those fumbles were actually accelerating their learning.
So it's like pushing past that fear of sounding silly, of making mistakes, because that's actually where the growth happens.
Precisely. And this applies to so much more than just language. Grant talks about the power of what he calls deliberate play, a blend of structured skill building with an element of fun and challenge.
I love that. Makes me think about Steph Curry, the basketball star. I read somewhere that his training regimen is insane, but he also seems to genuinely enjoy the process.
That's a perfect example of deliberate play. Curry incorporates these mini challenges and competitions into his training. Like, he'll have to make 5 shots in a row from 5 different spots on the court, all within a certain time limit. Keeps track of his scores, constantly pushing to beat his own best.
So it's structured, goal-oriented practice, but with that element of playfulness, of pushing your own limits just for the fun of it.
Exactly. And that's a key takeaway for our listeners. How can you incorporate deliberate play into your own skill development? If you're learning to code, maybe challenge yourself to build a simple game instead of just following tutorials. Or if you're a writer, try a new writing prompt every day. Find ways to make the process intrinsically motivating, even when it's challenging.
That's such a great point. It's not about making everything easy. It's about finding that sweet spot where challenge meets enjoyment. Now, what about those times when we do hit a wall, where no amount of deliberate play seems to be working?
Yeah.
Grant talks about looping in the book.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a bit?
Absolutely. Looping is that moment when you realize your straight line to success needs a detour. The book uses this great story of R.A. Dickey, the baseball pitcher. He spent years in the minor leagues, almost gave up on his dream of making it to the majors.
Yeah, those stories of resilience always grab me. What was Dickey's loop?
He had to basically relearn how to pitch. He mastered this rare, unpredictable pitch called the knuckleball. But it wasn't a quick fix. It took years of practice, mentorship, even going against conventional wisdom.
So looping isn't about giving up. It's about being open to changing course, even if it means temporarily moving away from your ultimate goal.
Exactly. It's about recognizing when your current approach isn't working and being willing to try something radically different, even if it feels counterintuitive.
And that takes guts. It reminds me of that saying, the shortest distance between 2 points isn't always a straight line. Sometimes you have to take the scenic route to get where you're going.
It's a great analogy. Dickey's story also highlights the importance of finding mentors, those who can guide you when you're feeling lost. But Grant also cautions against relying too heavily on a single mentor.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just about finding one guru to follow blindly.
Right. It's valuable to seek out diverse perspectives, learn from multiple guides who can offer different insights. Everyone's journey is unique, and what works for one person might not work for another.
Makes sense. It's like building your own personal board of advisors, each with their own area of expertise. Speaking of expertise, Grant talks about the Chilean mine rescue as an example of collective intelligence at work.
That's right. It's a powerful story of how a group of people with diverse skills and perspectives came together to solve a seemingly impossible problem. It wasn't just about one brilliant leader calling the shots, but about creating a system where everyone could contribute their expertise.
That's fascinating. So it's not just about individual brilliance, but about the synergy of a group working effectively together. How can we apply that collective intelligence concept to, say, a business setting or even just our everyday lives?
Grant gives some great examples. He talks about this technique called brainwriting as a way to make brainstorming sessions more effective.
Well,
Instead of the usual free-for-all, you have everyone write down their ideas individually first.
so that even the quieter voices in the room have a chance to be heard. Love that.
Exactly. And it often leads to more diverse and innovative solutions. He also talks about W.L. Gore, the company that makes Gore-Tex. They have this fascinating lattice organizational structure with no formal hierarchies or job titles.
Wow, no job titles. How does that even work?
It's about empowering employees at all levels to take ownership and collaborate freely, regardless of their position. It sounds counterintuitive, but they found it incredibly effective for fostering innovation.
It makes you wonder how many brilliant ideas get stifled in traditional top-down organizations, right? We've talked a lot about maximizing our own potential, but what about spotting that potential in others? That seems just as crucial, but way less talked about.
No, absolutely. And that's where things get really interesting in the last part of the book.
Okay.
Grant argues that our current systems for evaluating potential are deeply flawed. We miss out on so much talent because we're looking for the wrong things.
I'm really curious to unpack that. What kind of wrong things are we looking for?
Well, we often fixate on achievements that are easy to measure but not always the most meaningful,
Okay.
like standardized test scores or GPAs.
Right.
Those things matter to some extent, but they don't tell the whole story.
It's like we're so fixated on these standardized tests and checklists that we miss the bigger picture.
Exactly. Grant uses this powerful story about Jose Hernandez, who went from being a migrant farm worker to an astronaut.
Wow.
He was initially rejected by NASA because he didn't fit their narrow definition of what an astronaut should look like.
Wait, what? A future astronaut rejected? How is that even possible?
Their criteria were so focused on traditional metrics like academic pedigree and test scores that they overlooked the incredible resilience and determination Jose had demonstrated throughout his life. They didn't factor in the degree of difficulty he'd overcome, escaping poverty and language barriers to become an engineer.
It's like they judged him based on where he started, not how far he'd come. That's heartbreaking, but also eye-opening. We need to redefine how we measure potential.
Absolutely. Instead of just past achievements, we should consider factors like progress over time, adaptability, and the ability to overcome challenges. Those are much better indicators of future success than any standardized test score.
It makes you think about all the hidden gems out there. People with immense potential who are being overlooked because they don't fit the mold.
And imagine how much richer our world would be if we could tap into that untapped potential. Grant gives this great example of a call center in Israel that actually offers candidates a do-over during their job interviews.
A do-over.
Hmm?
Like a second chance to make a first impression. That's so unexpected.
Right. It recognizes that interviews can be nerve-wracking and that a single performance might not be a true reflection of someone's abilities. This approach creates a more humane and equitable playing field.
That really challenges the whole traditional interview process. It's more about understanding someone's potential than trying to catch them off guard.
Precisely. It's about creating systems that allow people to showcase their strengths rather than amplifying their weaknesses. This whole conversation has me thinking about that phrase, minimum lovable product, that's often used in the tech world.
Oh, yeah. Instead of aiming for perfection right out of the gate, You focus on creating something that's good enough to launch, and then you iterate and improve based on feedback.
And what if we applied that same principle to how we view ourselves and others? Instead of striving for some unattainable standard of perfection, what if we embrace the idea of being minimum lovable, allowing ourselves and others the space to learn, grow, and evolve over time?
That's such a powerful reframe. It takes the pressure off this idea of having to be perfect and instead encourages continuous learning and growth. I love that.
And that's really the heart of unlocking a hidden potential. It's not a destination, it's a journey. And the most important thing is to embrace the process with all its twists, turns, and unexpected detours.
So much wisdom packed into that message. I think that's the perfect note to end on. This deep dive has been incredibly insightful and thought-provoking. It's challenged me to rethink my own assumptions about talent, success, and the power of human potential.
And remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Grant's book is full of even more fascinating research and actionable strategies. I highly recommend diving into it for a deeper exploration.
To our listeners, if this conversation sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to pick up a copy of Hidden Potential. It's a game changer. And remember, you have the power to achieve great things. It's not about being born brilliant. It's about cultivating your character, embracing discomfort, seeking guidance, and building systems that unleash potential.
There's a world of possibilities waiting to be explored. With the right mindset and the courage to embrace our hidden potential, we can achieve more than we ever thought possible.